that wants to have fun with us. So these are the joys of being a modern accountant. So let me bring this full screen for you guys so everyone can see what we're doing here. So to rewind and go back to what I was saying, is we're going to be talking today about why modernize your practice before you sell. I'm not sure how many of you attended the IPD session where I talked about how to maximize the value before you sell. So we've taken that content and we've tried to modernize that and bring in some of the content and some of the value that I picked up at the QB Connect conference a couple weeks ago. So we're going to be talking more about why you want to modernize your practice and a little less about the actual process of preparing for succession. So without further ado, let me tell you a little bit about myself. So my name is Andrew Wall. I'm the owner of Wall CPA Chartered Professional Accountants. That's a born-in-cloud accounting practice. I am on social media, a big believer in social media, so if you're not already connected with me, please do so. You can reach out to me on Twitter or Instagram at WallCPA, or on LinkedIn at LinkedIn/small business accountant. And we're going to talk a little bit about social media today. I think that's a really important tool for the modern firm of the future. But please do reach out so we can keep this conversation going beyond this discussion today. The goal of today's agenda is to tell you a little bit about my story and the succession plan that I've gone through, because as I mentioned just a second ago, I'm the owner of Wall CPA, but that's not my whole story. And I'm going to share a little bit about how I came to start Wall CPA and where my future is going. And then we're going to talk about what I believe is the biggest shift that we need to look at. And there's a lot of major transitional changes going on right now. Obviously, we've got massive changes in technology with, I don't know if many of you are familiar with Moore's Law, which basically is telling us that computing power is doubling every 2 years, which is creating exponential shifts in capabilities of technology, not only in machine learning and in artificial intelligence and computer recognition and all the great things that are going to help us modernize your practice, but we're seeing major shifts in the generational changes and the age gap. So we now have more millennials in the workforce than any other generation. So I thought it was really important to talk a little bit about the age gap. And then we'll go into 3 reasons why I believe you should modernize your practice. Now, these are just 3 examples. We obviously can't cover all the reasons that you should modernize. I think there's really a ton of reasons why there's benefits to you and your practice to modernizing and getting the most out of your firm before you retire. No matter where you are on that succession path, whether you're looking at transitioning in the next year, in the next 5 years, or the next 10 years, there's tremendous value in bringing your firm into a firm of the future model. We're also going to close with, again, three ways on how to modernize your practice. And if we get a chance, I've got some bonus content that we'll go into to look at some of the new features that we have in QuickBooks Online and how you can take advantage of those as tools to help modernize your practice. So that'll be some hands-on stuff if we have time. One of the hard things with a presentation like this is I don't get the feedback from the audience the way I normally do in a face-to-face session. So I love to have these dialogues sort of be free-flowing. So if you do have questions throughout the session, please feel free to post them in the chat pane. And Michael is going to be my helping hand here to notify me whenever we've got some questions from the audience, and I will do my best to keep this a free-flowing conversation as much as possible. So let's start a little bit about my succession plan. And it's interesting that only, 66% of companies do not have any succession plan. I can tell you that even working with my father, he is 77 years old, and despite having a son who worked in the practice, and in fact, I had 4 other brothers and sisters who came and went through the practice, he didn't have a defined succession plan, and I think that's commonplace, particularly in an industry where, as my father puts it, it's not like lifting bricks. You can do this till the day you die. And so I think many people aren't putting the plans or putting in the steps to plan for succession. And I think that that can be detrimental. And in fact, in many ways, it was with my father's firm, because while I was working at my father's firm, it was a very traditional firm. It was a large team of people, very billable hour focused, large expensive overhead, a rigid structure, and no growth opportunities, not only for myself, but for the other team members here. And while I'm not a millennial, I do like to call myself one of the oldest millennials. In fact, a term I stole from Brad Silmanis out from Alberta, who likes to call himself the oldest millennial in Western Canada, and he allowed me to call myself the oldest millennial in Eastern Canada. And I really do like some of the values that the millennials hold dear. And I'm going to encourage those of you who aren't millennials who are on the call to recognize the value that this generation brings. And it was practice. And I, of course, was not a big fan of the timesheets and measuring everyone based on your billable hours, because I didn't think that that really was the true measure of the value that we were adding to our clients. And of course, you know, being billable hour focused and being time and materials focused, I didn't think that there was the opportunity to grow revenue as much as there was in building my own practice. So about 3 years ago, I did launch my own practice. I'm skipping ahead here. And it was a born in cloud business. And one of the greatest advantages of a born in cloud business is there's virtually no overhead. I didn't have a big expensive office. When I started out, had no staff at all. It was very high margin because it was driven based on my own time. It was location independent, which meant I could work from my house, my cottage, virtual offices, temporary communal offices. I not only had the flexibility to work where I wanted, but I could work when I wanted. And that was probably the greatest and most important advantage to me, because as I said, I had a young family, and I wanted to be able to be there when my kids came home from school, but be able to still add value and continue to work once the kids were asleep. And in fact, it turned out to be a great opportunity not only for myself, but for my clients, because I discovered that the clients appreciated being able to have those evening appointments, whereas in the traditional practice with my father's accounting firm, it was very 9 to 5, very traditional. And while clients did come in every day for their in-person meetings into our office and took time from their busy schedules, when I started offering the evening appointments, I found that that was actually very high in demand. And in fact, most of my clients preferred to meet in the evenings, and those became the sessions that were most in demand. And as a result of having greater flexibility, better overhead, I started to see pretty significant growth. Now, of course, it's easy to grow from zero. When you've got, it's easy to have double and triple digit growth when you start from zero. But there was a great opportunity because not many people were seeing this opportunity that I saw 3 years ago. So it allowed me to be one of the early adopters and to be recognized for some of those efforts, including being recognized by HubDoc as the top 50 cloud accountants in North America 3 years in a row, being recognized as one of the first firm of the futures here in Canada 3 years ago, and then last year being a runner-up for the global firm of the future, and then again on social media being able to have one of the largest social media presences in Canada, like I said, over 56,000 followers on Twitter, which is, I think, bigger than the Canadian versions of the Big Four, and being recognized as one of the top 100 cloud brands in the world, outpacing organizations like HP and IBM, which, again, was a great opportunity to leverage some of these modern practices that accountants have that, again, my father didn't really recognize the value of social media in the way that I did. And it is difficult, and we'll talk more about social media, to measure the ROI on that, but I can tell you definitively, and I will be talking at the QB Connect conference for those who are there, about how to actually generate revenue from social media. And we're going to have some great panelists on that discussion, including Jenny Moore, Tamitha Deniers, and Seth David, who is a brilliant guy out of the States. We're lucky to have him come up and join us. But actually, last year's QB Connect, my father was up on stage, and he was able to see our community for the first time and really recognize the value of what was being built in our community and where we were going with the cloud. And of course, there we are. He announced at that session that him and I were going to be coming back to the fold and merging sort of the old and the new. And I've been working with him since January here with his practice, CA4IT, and bringing his traditional firm into a modern firm. And we still have a large team, but now we're very location independent, and we have what we call a distributed workforce with staff in Canada, in Mexico, in Italy, in India, and even Uganda. So this has allowed us to take advantages of the cloud and a distributed workforce, but also to take advantages of having a distributed client base as well, with clients as far away as Nunavut in the Northwest Territories. It's one of the great advantages of being cloud-based, is now we can have those meetings via GoToWebinar or Zoom or any of these great technologies that allow us to meet virtually, but be able to share our screen, share our video, and communicate in ways that are far more effective. And again, clients really do appreciate this new approach because they don't have to deal with traffic, they don't have to deal with parking. And what I found personally is clients tend to be far more reliable about being on time for a virtual meeting than a physical meeting, and I guess that could be a result of the joys of commuting. But one, clients are far more reliable, it's far more effective as a use of our time. The clients appreciate it, and it delivers value to them. And that's the big thing that we've changed, is now we're value focused rather than billable hour focused. And one of the things that we've implemented is what we call a client-centric survey. And what we do is we sit down with every one of our clients at our year-end review meeting, and we ask them for 5 satisfaction factors, the 5 things that are most valuable to them as it relates to the service that we provide. And we ask them to rate each of those satisfaction factors on a scale of 1 to 5, and then tell us on a scale of 1 to 5 how we're doing on delivering value on those satisfaction factors. And this has been a really enlightening process for us and helping us to realize that the things that are most important for growing our business and adding more value and growing our revenue are not the things that we necessarily thought were important. And in fact, I don't think I've had anyone say yet that price was the most important client-centric value. And in fact, we get things that are far more important, like being niche-focused, helping them reduce the amount of time that they spend doing their bookkeeping, helping them maximize their deductions, all things that technology can help us to achieve. And now as a modern firm, we're far more growth and team-focused. We run a much more collaborative type of management strategy, in fact, flattening the organization, taking an entire layer of middle management out of the organization so that we have more of a collaborative approach. We're doing team sessions up at our cottage where we're doing development and growth, not only for the organization, but for the team. I brought 2 of my account managers down to QB Connect in San Fran. It was a great, unbelievable experience for them. I'm bringing 11 people to QB Connect here in Toronto. And this is really helping us focus and collaborate as a team so that we can build iteratively on the old process and make it better. Because the one thing is, what I have learned in trying to bring an old firm along to a modern practice is that you have to be patient and that you have to work iteratively, because it takes time to bring an existing practice over, a lot more time than it takes to bring a tradition or bring a born in cloud practice over to a firm in the future. And the analogy I often use is with a born in cloud business, if you want to change something, if you want to move to value pricing, for example, it's as simple as turning a key and doing it. And whereas doing it with an established firm, it's sort of like rearranging a bedroom where all the furniture is tied to every other piece of furniture. And as you try to move one piece, it affects another piece. And there's a whole process of bringing that team along. The great news is, in combination with some of the strategies that we've implemented, including structures, compensation structures, where team members now get compensated based on the value that they add to the firm, which we measure everyone in the organization based on 3 things, which is how happy our clients, which we use a Net Promoter Score, how fast are we turning around files, and we use a CRM system to measure how many days in-house it takes us to complete a file, and what the final revenue is. And for each team member working on the files in production, we give them a bonus that is their total revenue that they've earned divided by the number of days, the average number of days in-house, multiplied by their Net Promoter Score. We do the Net Promoter Score on a 0 to 10 or a 0 to 1 ratio, so a 9 out of 10 would be the equivalent of a 0.9. And this allows the team to understand how their inputs affect the outputs of the organization and help us to align the vision of the organization with what's important to our clients. And it's been a great process for us. Our year-end, our fiscal year-end is July, so from January to July, we increased revenue by 10%, and in the first quarter of our next fiscal, of what will be 2018, we're up 45% over the same quarter of last year. So I'm hoping that the reason I'm telling you all this is not necessarily to brag or to tell you what to do, but to just sort of illustrate that there are ways to bring more traditional practices into a modern age and to reap the rewards of that, which are increasing your bottom line, increasing customer satisfaction, and increasing staff satisfaction and staff loyalty, which are all drivers of the value that you will get out of your practice when you want to sell. So I do want to talk a little bit about the age gap, because as I mentioned, we are going through, a digital revolution here, and that is obviously driven by the changes in technology and what we're seeing there and the rise of AI, but it's also being driven by the demographic change, and that's because, the generations from my generation and from the boomers didn't grow up as digital natives, and the millennials have. So they've grown up accustomed to this technology, and they adapt to this technology in very different ways than we do. And with 61% of firm owners being over the age of 50, that means the majority of people who are in practice now are at or near retirement age. And first of all, let's take a look at what defines a boomer. And a boomer is technically anyone who was born between the years of 1946 and 1962. And obviously, the points I have up here about being committed and hardworking, believing that the office is the place to get things done, is generalizations at best. And if Elaine Orr is on the call, she'll give me a hard time for saying that all boomers are one way. Obviously, everyone is unique. There's very tech-savvy boomers, just like there's millennials who aren't tech-savvy at all. But as we look at generalizations, the boomers who, as a generation, really changed the world in so many different ways. As the largest generation that we've seen, they made changes in how we looked at raising families and how we looked at running businesses. They were very individualistic as a generation, but they were committed and hardworking, and they wanted a job where they could really showcase their skills. And after years of building up these skills, they wanted and demanded respect for the work that they're doing. And I can tell you, well, not necessarily of all boomers, was certainly the case for my father. He'd come from, traditional large organizations where you did as you were told, and it was very much a hierarchy. It was not collaborative, and as a generation, he was resistant to change. And I think that that's more true in our industry than any other industry, because as accountants, we by nature are resistant to change because we're taught to be conservative and avoid risk, and change is often perceived as risk. But one of the most important things to recognize is that change is inevitable and transformation is optional. So this change is going to take place whether you like it or not. Whether you choose to transform and take advantage of that change is completely up to you. And I think one of the most important things to understand, as I said, is the shift in generations and knowing and understanding how millennials are of value to your organization and how they are going to be the next generation of people taking over those practices that are looking to sell in the next 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. Millennials are unique, and as my dad likes to say, he defines a millennial as anyone younger than him that he doesn't like. And they often do get a bad rap, but millennials are typically very smart, very creative. They are digital natives, as I've said in the past, and they're looking for a different type of organization, one that makes an impact, one that has value to their life, and one that gives them the opportunity to grow and expand their skill set. And I think if we look at organizations with the understanding that this is the generation to take over, it really gives us the impetus to want to take advantage of some of the technology and some of the opportunities that this technology is bringing to modernize our practice. And I think that if we work together as a generation, and I love how my PowerPoint is giving me so much, oh, upside down. If we work together as a generation, we get the most out of it. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities for millennials and boomers to work together. Technology is being my friend today. I will get the slide up, just bear with me. And if I don't, we'll just skip on. But basically, one of the big things to recognize about millennials is one of the things that they do value is mentorship. And there is a lot that the older staff members in our organizations can teach the younger staff members in our organizations, as well as a lot that the younger generations can teach the older generations. And this is frustrating. The most important thing I think that we want to do is, there we go, share versus teach, and recognize that if we keep an open mind and try to learn from one another, that the organization is going to grow tremendously. And as I said, 75% of millennials have said that they look up to mentors. And I think that this is important for the older partners and the older generation to be recognized for the value that they've added to these organizations. We are asking you to make a shift in technology and in modernizing your practice, but it's not without recognizing the value that you guys have built in this organization and the value that my father built into his practice. And that was one of the most important things for me is to build upon that success that we've already had. It's not that we're dropping the old ways, it's that we're adapting them. And it's not the first time that my father or other boomers have had to go through transitions. There's been lots of changes in the accounting industry as we've gone through the years. And in fact, my father went through his own technology change with the advent of the personal computer. And that's what enabled him to build his own practice when he started off, was his mother gave him an Osborne 64 quote-unquote portable computer, which probably weighed about 30 pounds and was far from what we would consider portable today. But it enabled him to digitize his accounting process and get away from the old school physical ledgers and to modernize his practice. So this isn't anything new. Change isn't anything new. It's just a different form of change. And if we work together as the different generations, I think this is where we're going to get the most value for our firms, regardless of whether we're planning to make the transition or not. And again, a great quote here from Warren Buffett, who says, managers and investors alike must understand that accounting numbers are the beginning of the business valuation. And that is so true, because the people in your organization, the processes in your organization are as much, if not more, value than the bottom line. And it's really important for everybody to understand. And in fact, that ties right into why I think that firms should modernize, and some of the 3 reasons why I think practices should modernize. And that's because one of the most interesting statistics I came across in preparing for this presentation is that 85% of CPA valuations are based on the intangible assets. And in fact, that statistic was about 3 or 4 years old. And I would argue that an even greater percentage of a firm's value in transition is based on the intangible assets. And some of those intangible assets include experienced staff, loyal customer base, reputation, growing industry, branding, location, and technology. And if you want to take advantage and maximize these intangible assets, it really is important to modernize your firm. Because by modernizing your firm and bringing in younger millennials as part of your workforce, that's going to give you an experienced staff that are going to be there to make the transition from your existing practice to whoever takes over the practice if and when you sell it. And of course, not only looking at millennials as staff and members of our team, but also as customers. And having a growing industry is really an important value for anyone who's looking at buying a practice. And if the majority of our clients are boomers, and boomers are retiring at over 10,000 boomers are retiring each day, that's not a growing industry, that's a shrinking industry. Whereas the millennials, and this is really interesting, we got this down at QB Connect, in the year 2000, the millennials were literally just a blip on the workforce. But by 2005, 15% of the workforce was millennials, and by 2010, it was 25% of the millennials. And today, they are now the biggest portion of the workforce. And in addition, that workforce itself is transitioning, and more people are moving from full-time employment to independent contractors and the new model of employment. And this is a tremendous opportunity for accountants to leverage that shift and to take advantage of it not only from resources internally and team members, but also as a new client base. And of course, modernizing our firm and using technology and processes that are easily transferable and that are location independent are going to increase the value or the perceived value that your firm has to any prospective buyer. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, being location independent, not only for which clients we serve, as well as which staff members we have, help us to improve our bottom line for the organization by increasing the number of clients that we can serve. And it's really interesting because some of the most successful cloud accountants are actually from small rural communities. Tamitha Daniels and Jennifer Moore are not from big metropolises like Vancouver or Toronto. They're from small rural communities, but have leveraged the cloud to be able to service clients all across the country. And I think that that's a big advantage that every firm should be taking advantage of. And of course, there's various pieces of technology that you can use to systemize and manage the growing number of clients that you have. And if we have time, we're going to go into some of those features within QuickBooks that can help you manage your practice. One of the other reasons that I think you should modernize your practice is to attract the right buyer. We recognize that the millennials, or at least I recognize that millennials are going to be the generation that is most likely to purchase an accounting practice in the next 5 or 10 years. So if we're taking a traditional practice and putting it on the market and trying to appeal to those buyers, the value or the perceived value is going to be far lower than a firm that actually has been modernized. And if we recognize who the buyers are going to be, we have the ability to attract the right buyer by making sure that our firm has got the right value proposition, that our customers can relate to whoever the future purchaser of that practice is, and then our team can relate to the future owner of our practice. Because any good succession plan, or any succession plan that I've ever seen, has some form of retention clause in it. And so if the person taking over your practice isn't aligned properly with your firm, isn't aligned properly with your customers, they will likely lose some of those customers and some of those team members. And as a result, you as the successee will not reap the maximum reward financially that you could if you had modernized your practice. So making sure that your firm is positioned for these digital natives and that you have a vision for the future that you can sell to whoever the prospective buyer is really important, because I think if someone is looking at your practice, if you just put yourself in the shoes of anyone who's planning to purchase your practice, they're looking at what value that they can get out of the practice and where they can take it. And if they don't see a vision for the future, if they see a practice that is just trying to get out before the transition takes place, they're going to take advantage of that, and they're going to pay you the least amount that they can possibly pay you, because they're going to see the least value that they can. And worse still, if they really don't recognize the value and they think it's too traditional, they won't even be interested in purchasing your practice. What they will do is simply compete and target your customers and steal those customers out from under you, because, as I said, it's not just a shift from the accountants, it is more a shift from our customers that are demanding changes in technology and changes in how we approach them. And the last point is to ride this age wave. So I know I'm belaboring the point a little bit, but I do think that this transition from boomers to millennials is probably one of the most important shifts that we're going to face. And I think that if we prepare our firm and we modernize our firm today, it helps us to avoid fire sales. It means that we're in a position to sell now, and if we are ever forced to, for health reasons or anything else, we've got our firm modernized, we've thought about succession, and we've prepared our firm for transition so that we can get the most out of it. It also is important to leverage supply and demand, and what I mean by that is simply that if we've got 10,000 boomers retiring every day, the longer you wait, the more supply that there's going to be on the market, and the less demand there's going to be, and therefore, as a result, the less that you're going to get out of your practice when you do sell it. So I think preparing our firm for modernization and not looking to work until the last day that we can is going to help us to reap the maximum reward out of selling our practice. And again, modernizing our firms allows us to sell while we're in the driver's seats. It allows us to be the dictators of our future rather than being driven by the changes that are happening. And if we do this, we can maximize all of the revenue before we actually sell our practice. And another great quote here is that if you can't get it all right, don't get it all wrong. I can tell you that in our succession, we certainly did not get it all right. It was a form of trial and error. I do believe that you learn the most from some of your errors, and what I encourage everyone to do is just begin the process. Start each day with the idea of bringing your practice into the new direction with one approach, and take it in iterations and in baby steps, and take it slowly one step at a time. And so that brings us to the specifics of how to modernize our practice. And some of the stuff might really be redundant for those of you on the call. It's hard for me to gauge because we don't have that conversational aspect right now to understand how many of you have actually made the transition to the cloud and how many of you are considering it. But here in Canada, we're sitting at about 10% market penetration of the small businesses that have moved to the cloud. But we've got over 30% that are planning to move to the cloud in the next 12 months. And if we look around the world, it's really interesting to see how other countries like Australia and like the UK, who have led the way for us, where they are in this transition path. And right now, Australia is at about 45% market penetration with the cloud and growing every year. So there really is this tremendous opportunity to leverage taking advantage of these cloud technologies. I don't know why my slides are giving me a hard time. It wants to jump. There we go. So the advantages of the cloud are it's obviously secure, and you're going to have a very robust security infrastructure where you've got security professionals making sure everything is backed up and protected against hackers, far more so than what most accounting firms will have in their own office. Now, I'm sure some of you have spent lots of time making sure that your systems have firewalls and all your data is encrypted both at rest and in transition, but not all accounting firms are doing that. particularly those owner-managed practices that are sole proprietors. And the cloud offers a way to have a very secure and robust environment that also doesn't have any of the hidden costs that go along with owning your own infrastructure. And when I talk about the cloud and leveraging the cloud, I'm not only talking about leveraging QuickBooks Online, which is a great tool to add bookkeeping as a new revenue line and to be able to take advantages of all the tools around practice management and workflow that can help your business grow, but also looking at things like GoToWebinar and looking at Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure. And one of the things that encouraged us to make the transition to a cloud solution for the physical infrastructure that we still couldn't access in the cloud, like Profile and like Caseware and like those other softwares that are still desktop driven, was because we had a server failure the day before T4 deadlines. And that cost us about $20,000 in hardware and labor to bring that back up to speed. And after that, I basically said, no more. I am not owning physical hardware anymore. The only physical hardware that we own are what I call disposable laptops, where no information is actually stored on the laptops. Everything resides on Citrix Terminal Services. And if the computer breaks down, we toss it in the garbage and we go to Best Buy and buy another one for $500 and away we go. The other advantage of the cloud is it's a lot more transferable than owning your own physical architecture, and it's a lot more scalable. If I need additional RAM or if I need additional processing speed, I can literally turn a dial and increase that. If I want to put more clients onto QBO, I just add them on, and I don't have to worry about what infrastructure costs that I'll need to support that. And with value billing, that's all built into the pricing that I charge my clients. The other big advantage, as I've said already, is the fact that it is location independent. You can access this information anywhere you are in the world, whether that be at your cottage, whether that be while I'm down at a conference in QuickBooks Connect, whether that be while I'm down on vacation, whether that be while I'm at a client site. I know I have access to all of the information that I need to run my practice and to work with my clients just by accessing the internet. And in fact, with mobile technology now, I can even run everything and stream everything through my LTE connection here and rely entirely on mobile as a way to be able to access my information, which is amazing to see the distribution of mobile technology, which is, again, another big transition that we're facing. So those are really the three main ways, or sorry, two main ways to modernize your practice. And the last, and arguably the most valuable, is with value-based billing. And value-based billing, as many of you have heard about, and there's great speakers at QB Connect, Mark Wickersham and Ron Baker, who are the godfathers of value-based billing, can tell you the benefits of this far better than I can. But what I can speak to is the experience that it's been for us. And one of the greatest advantages with my father's practice is that we don't squabble over invoices anymore. And we did our best to make sure clients understood what we expected the fee to be, but it wasn't always what the client was expecting, no matter how we did our best to communicate that. And there was often time spent resolving those issues. Whereas with the cloud, we agree with what the fee is going to be up front. The only reason that that fee will change is if the scope of the work changes. And the great advantage of with value-based billing is we're now we're changing our ceiling, which was the number of hours that we can work, and the charge-out rate per hour, to now being our floor. That's the minimum that we'll charge, and we can go up from there depending upon the added value that we can add to our clients. And then, of course, there's the cash flow, which means that we're not dealing with accounts receivable anymore. We're actually in a pre-receivables environment where we're getting paid every single month for the work that we're going to complete. Some of it during the course of the month, but some of it at the end of the year as well. And of course, with this whole value-based billing process, we've been able to increase our margins yet still have happier clients. And I think that that's the most important thing to understand, is that despite us having higher margins, clients are happier because we've aligned the price that we're charging our clients with the value that they're receiving. And the most important thing, if you're planning to implement value pricing, is understanding what your clients value, which comes back to what I talked about earlier, that we use is our client-centric survey to make sure that we understand what our clients do value, so that we can make sure that we're aligning our services with what's important to them. And it's really important not to guess at that, and to make sure that you engage with your customers and create a dialogue to understand what's important to them. And so those are the three main ways to modernize your practice. There are other ways. We can talk about CRM systems. We can talk about different forms of technology. And in fact, depending upon how long the Q&A goes, I'm going to take us through some of the great tools within QBO that can help us to modernize our practice with some of the technology that they offer. But the most important thing is to not be afraid of this transition, to take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of us, because another great quote here from Fernando Flores, which says, "Great work is done by people who are not afraid to be great." And if you want to be one of the leaders in this transition, there's still an opportunity, because we still are in the relative early days. Now, like I said, I've been doing this for over 3 years now. So it's not, just the Hawaiian shirt crazy accountants like myself that are doing it. It is now becoming, I think we're now reaching the tipping point, and we are starting to see traditional firms. We are now seeing the big 4 firms who are making the transition. So I saw presentations from Deloitte while I was at QB Connect, who have done an outstanding job in the UK. And the reality is that they are going to be competing with us in the small business market because of the use of this technology and the way it enables them to be more effective with their practice. And if you want to compete in that realm, it's important for you to make this transition and to modernize your practice. Even if you are planning to sell your practice in the next 5, 10, 15 years, it's important to make that transition so that you can get the most out of your practice. So maximize your value, avoid some of the common mistakes, leverage some of the great value that you can get out of technology, and be a modern firm. So with that, I do want to open it up to Q&A. I'm not sure how many questions that we do have, but I'd love to open it up. I'm going to take a look at our chat window here to see what we've got here. And we don't have any questions, so which means I've either done an outstanding job or I've done a terrible job, one or the other. So please feel free to type any questions that you have into the chat pane. And Michael, if you do see any questions, just let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to move along and maybe, first of all, tell you guys about the next webinar that's coming up on December the 12th, which is getting ready for your year-end, best practices in preparing a new set of books. And you can register for that. So it looks like the URL is bit.ly/2B95FDX. So I'm not sure, Mike, maybe you can tell us who's going to be hosting that webinar. I'm not sure who's doing that, but I'm sure it's going to be one of the great speakers.
Yeah, so for December 12th, the speaker is Elaine Orr.
So I know Elaine very well. She's a great presenter. Had the joy of sharing the stage with her, I guess, 2 years ago at what is now QB Connect, what was Thrive. So I encourage those of you who are on the call to register for that webinar. She's a great, very knowledgeable accountant and bookkeeper who's got lots of wit. So let's look a little bit about some of the features within QBO that you can use to help modernize your practice. And there's a great quote here from Jag Bath that says, having Intuit QuickBooks as a technology partner for our firm has allowed us to play the advisor role rather than just a compliance officer, shifting the conversation with our clients from past results to future growth. And I really I couldn't agree more with Jag. I mean, Intuit has been an unbelievable technology partner for us, and it's been amazing for me to be able to participate in the Accountants Council and to help drive the direction of some of the products. And one of the great things about this organization is they really do listen to our community and are trying to make the product better every day. And some of the ways that they've done that is by adding some new tools for us, including improving the new Find an Accountant portal, which is a great way to grow our practice and find new clients. They've also created new tools to help us improve our efficiency with things like work papers, and then, of course, managing the growth of our practices. Because if we're getting all these new clients and we're more efficient, we do need a way to be able to manage that growth. So they've got the new practice management software that is a great tool. It's got some new recurring reminders. It's got some automation in there so that some of the tasks that are organically flowing out of QBO will be triggered. So let's see how much of that we can get through in the next 10 or 12 minutes. And like I say, Michael, if you can do me a favor, if any questions do pop up, can you let me know?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I just had a question come through a couple minutes ago from Richard Lee. He's asked, what process do you employ for recruiting your online team?
So, you know what, there's, I got from the Firm of the Futures, Juliette Moore and Steve Lotz. I attended their session last year on hiring, and it really changed the way the process that I go through. And it's going to be hard for me to do justice in the short time that we have here. So I encourage you to I think they're actually doing a session on hiring again at QB Connect. So I encourage you to attend that, and they'll give you the in-depth process that they use. But part of it is basically obviously putting together a great ad to appeal to these people, as well as having a process for application that I really love this process that they have where the person has to call in and they have to go through, they have to answer a bunch of questions and they have to end the call with ciao. And if they don't end the call with ciao, they're immediately thrown out of the list as potential candidates, because that's a level that shows you how detail oriented they are. So I think that was one of the big tidbits I took out of it. One of the other things that I learned from Steph Hines of GrowthWise in the UK at my last at this QB Connect, which actually we've come back and we've just implemented in this last week, is we're offering an incentive to any staff of $2,500 for anyone who refers a staff, a future staff member that we hire. And the advantage there is that we know that they're going to bring in people that fit culturally with us, because obviously, you know, no one wants to bring in someone they don't enjoy working with. And so we're going to get, and I haven't done it yet. I haven't actually got a new hire out of this process because it's a week old. But Steph told me that it really was instrumental for her in growing her practice and making sure that she brought in team members that are aligned with her values. So sort of word of mouth is a great way. And then having a process around how you vet these people. And again, I encourage everyone to attend Juliette and Steve's seminar at QB Connect. That will spend a whole hour on this process, because it really is an important process for bringing on the right staff members. Now, their approach is more geared around a local team, and we have, like I say, a distributed team. And I think you can take some of their approaches and just add in the concept of how do you grow this beyond your local borders. And there's a million ways to do that, whether you're looking at using some of those, I can't think of the name right now, but there's websites where you can find Elance, which Odesk or whatever it's called now, which is a great tool to find resources in Fiverr, to test out people on small iterative packages to see what their capabilities are. Lots of ways to approach international markets. And then again, for us, we've also had tremendous opportunities to be part of trade missions, to go down to been to China, been to Africa, been to India. So whenever you get opportunities to look at things like that, I encourage you to take advantage of it. That's not necessarily going to be the right fit for everybody. We happen to stumble across it because some of the work that we've done in technology and business process automation and some of the other things that we've done, you know, back in 1999. So I went a long-winded explanation there. Short answer, go and see Steve and Juliet's presentation. It'll really help. So finding new accountants, I'm going to run through this stuff really quickly. To find a new accountant portal, it's got a new search results page, completely rewound or redone. And I know that in talking with some of the key people in Intuit, they're telling us the results are astronomical as how they've been able to connect more and more accountants with bookkeepers. It's in everyone's best interest, the small business owner, the accountant, and even Intuit, to be able to create this connection. So they're working hard to be able to improve this process. So one of the things that we're going to see in here is it's got a clearer, more intuitive search filters for the people who are looking for accountants and bookkeepers. The reviews are more prominent, and reviews are becoming critical. A digital review is considered as trustworthy as a referral or recommendation from a friend. So make sure you're getting the reviews in there and done. It shows your QuickBooks certification, and so you can demonstrate your expertise. There's a new About Me preview, and one of the things you can do is you can A/B test this. So try a profile for 1 month, see what the results are, switch it around, and see if you get better results. It does list the services that you provide, so you can choose the services that you're going to have, and they've got the ability to send a message right from the search page. But I think one of the things that I like most is, if I've got this, the QBO-A experience, which I love over here, being able to see what the performance has been in the last 30 days, to see how many profiles that you've had, how many profile views that you've had, how many leads and inquiries that you've generated, and how many social media links. So again, social media, and I think I somehow skipped over social media. I'm going to have to go back and jump into that because my slides were acting important. A little funny on today's presentation. So this is actually a good reason to bring into social media, which is one of the other ways to modernize your practice, because social media is now a very important part of my practice. In fact, it generates over 20% of the leads to our website, and our website generates over 30% of the new clients that we acquire, and we're getting anywhere between 100 to 150 new clients every year. So social media has been a very important part of our practice, and we've been able to generate some value out of that. And social media is also a great tool for those of you who are making the transition to be able to connect with our community and be able to engage with Facebook groups like QBHQ and QBO and Quinty, where we've got firms who have already made the transition and be able to learn from them. And everyone in this community is all about helping each other to grow and succeed. And that's one of the things why I love this community so much, is because nobody has an ego. Everybody wants to help each other. And we all improve, you know, sort of the expression, I guess, all ships rise with the rising tide. And that's sort of the idea and the mentality that we have. If we can elevate the entire community, we all do better. And it's not that competitive traditional force that I was used to in, the old school seminars and sessions that I would do. So social media tells you your social media views, and now what you can do is you can go in and sort of A/B test your profile. Try a profile for 30 days, see what results you get, modify your profile, add more reviews, and see what the results are. And it's a great way to be able to see what you're doing, and a great way to be able to grow your profile. They do encourage having a headshot. They say that goes a long way for generating clients. It creates that more personalized view. And of course, making sure that you've completed all the new content fields, number of years you've been in businesses, the languages, which I love that you can select which languages. I don't like that you can't search by language. And I was making a recommendation to the team at Intuit, and I'll reiterate that request for anyone from Intuit who is listening. That really, I would love to see that as being part of the search capability when people are looking for a bookkeeper to search by this language. And then, of course, filling in your social media channels. So write an awesome review. Make sure that this is, can this person solve your problem or the problem of your bookkeeper? So try to understand your market and position your pitch towards that market, and make sure that you're someone that they want to work with. Here's a great stat of what I said earlier. 88% of consumers trust online reviews as much as they trust personal recommendations. So getting those online reviews is critical. And the best time to ask for that is right after you've completed the work. Again, there's ways, if you work with your BDM, they can get you a link that you can send to your clients, so it'll take them right to the section to write a review. Work papers, I'm going to sort of skip through work papers because we literally have like 2 minutes left. And work papers, well, a interesting tool and a great opportunity to, I think, will eventually replace caseware. Many of you probably aren't at the point yet where it's quite ready to replace work papers or caseware for you yet. I still have a lot of hopes and dreams for where this product is going to go, and I encourage those of you who have the time to look into that deeper. But I'm going to skip over work papers and talk more about practice management once I get there. Because practice management, depending upon the size of firm that you are, is going to be a game changer. Now, for larger firms, you might have your own CRM system. You might be using workflow systems like Carbon. We use a product called Infusionsoft, which is a CRM that we've been able to set up to use automatic task creation and workflow automation to be able to make our practice more efficient. But for those of you who are starting out and don't have a workflow system, and even those of you who have established ones, I think there are ways to look at this. And I'm really excited about when they open up the API on this, because that's something that we're going to use to integrate with our existing CRM system so it all ties together. And that I know is coming but doesn't exist today. But with this new practice management, it's easy to be able to come in and see your dashboard and see what tasks that you have on the go. There's the ability to do recurring tasks. There's the ability to assign tasks to other team members. And this is really going to be a great tool to help you be able to monitor all the different clients that you have. And as you modernize your practice and as it gives you the capability to be more efficient and effective, it really is important to be able to manage this growth in a systemized way. And again, if we're looking at transitioning this firm, if there is a system and process in place, that adds more value to the prospective buyer than a firm that is running things ad hoc through the current owner-manager's, mindset, or through their, email or whatever non-standardized processes that they have. So this is a great way to look at adding value to your firm and modernizing it. Again, we can do some filtering by team members, filtering by items and types of work, and filtering by whether it's from QuickBooks, because you can actually use this not only for your QuickBooks QBO clients, you can actually use it for all your clients. And I think that that's really insightful and smart of Intuit to think of it as a tool that accountants can use to manage their entire practice, not just those firms that are on QBO. You can look at this for the different tasks, whether it's to do, in process, complete, or even blocked. You can create new jobs very quickly and very easily. Again, there's going to be more automation as we get more artificial intelligence, more machine learning. These tools are going to get better every single year. And the sooner that you get on there and taking advantage of these tools, the better off that you're going to be. So I'm now 1 minute over. So I'm just going to wrap up and say thank you. I appreciate those of you who stayed on the call with us this long. And again, if you want to connect with me for any follow-up questions, again, I'm on social media. Hit me up on Twitter or Instagram @WallCPA, or LinkedIn, of course. And Facebook, you can just search Andrew Wall, and I should be one of the first people to come up. Always happy to keep the conversation open and continuing the dialogue. And, of course, looking forward to meeting those of you who will be at QB Connect next week. So come up and say hi and introduce yourselves and ask me any questions that you might have. And other than that, I think I'm wrapped. Michael, anything else you'd like me to cover, or anything I've missed?
No, that's everything there. I think we'll be respectful of everyone's time, and we'll end the webinar on that note. Thank you, Andrew, for your participation today.
And sorry for the tech trouble.
Not a problem. Thanks, everyone, for attending. Have yourselves a great day.